Hello, welcome back to my channel. My friends, today I'm going to be talking about my weight loss journey. I have been talking about this for months, as it is something I've been doing for months, but I wanted to sit down and film my kind of like midway point update, tell you what I've been doing, how I have been approaching weight loss, especially as it pertains to PCOS, since I've been having great success. And I know a lot of people out there have PCOS and are looking for the keys to success, the answers for what you should be doing to lose weight with PCOS and or to just manage your PCOS in general. So I'm going to be answering some of that here today as well. This is going to be a very lengthy video, so feel free to skip ahead. I'm going to put chapter markers down below, and more of the kind of like personal side of things slash the more in-depth answers are going to be near the end of the video with the Q&A section. The first part of the video is going to be like fairly scientific, so just be aware of that. And before we get into it, let me give you a couple of disclaimers because I think it's important to do so. Number one, I am not a doctor or a registered dietitian. I have relied on registered dietitians and on doctors for a lot of my answers, but I'm probably not going to articulate things as well as they would, and I am just not either of those things. So please seek your own research. In addition to listening to this video, obviously, I'm talking about my own personal experience with these things. I'm going to be speaking about calories, deficits, and calorie counting, so if you have a history with eating disorders, I would definitely tread carefully with this video. I don't believe that any of the things that I'm going to be talking about are disordered behaviors, but I know that really anything can lead to disordered behavior, and it's not entirely within our control whether or not we get eating disorders in the first place. So please tread carefully if you have an experience with eating disorders. And then thirdly, I like to think that I approach things with kindness, and with a really like balanced approach, but I'm also an extremely candid person and I'm not going to sugarcoat any of this. So if that is going to be frustrating for you, feel free to click off the video at any time if you are not liking the way that I'm speaking. You know, makes sense. I think that some things are going to resonate with some people and some things are not going to resonate with others. So let's get into it, shall we? I think the first thing we need to start with is my own personal history with food and with body image. As long as I can remember, I have been extremely thin. This is not a humble brag by any means. This is just the reality of my life and my situation. Both of my parents are extremely thin, and I'm sure that I got that from them genetically. I'm nearly 30. And for my whole life, being thin has obviously been in, especially when I was kind of in my teen and or preteen years, being extremely thin was very valued. And I think because of that, I never really thought about my body. All of the clothes in stores fit me. No one was making fun of my body. Did I get made fun of for my big nose and for other things? Yes, of course. But I was not made fun of or made to feel other because of my body. And it's something that obviously in the moment you don't think about because you're literally not being led to think about it. But now, obviously moved from that situation, I can see how lucky and privileged I was to experience that, to like not have to be in a situation where I was constantly thinking about my body at a young age. Even the media didn't play into my body image when I was young. I really didn't think about it. And it's something that frankly, I want to get back to now that I'm older, but get into that later. I think that's a really important place to start though, because I was really thin growing up, and it wasn't until I would say college that I really started thinking about my body. I didn't have like a traditional freshman 15 experience, but I remember being a freshman in college in a sorority, really thinking about my body for the first time, because even though I was thin and had always been thin, people didn't really talk about my body. It wasn't until college that I was getting compliments just simply for existing and simply for being thin, because I wasn't doing anything to achieve that. And I started to realize that a lot of people were doing a lot to achieve that. And it wasn't something I was unaware of. I knew that there were people dieting. I had seen other people growing up dieting, and I had seen how some of my friends in larger bodies were like affected by the media at that time. Just looking back at like people calling Jessica Simpson fat, like just craziness, right? But I wasn't really forced to face body image head on until I was a freshman in college, when again, I was getting like compliments about something that I had no control over. It like seemingly didn't have any control over. And that's kind of when I started thinking about my body, and it just kind of never stopped. So throughout college, I think I gained maybe like 10 or 15 pounds kind of over the course of the entire 4 years. I ended up transferring to a different university that had access to much better food. I was working a office job while being in college, so I was probably more sedentary than some of my peers, and kind of the weight just crept up a little bit. It wasn't anything that I was super combative of. Like I wasn't trying to fight the weight gain necessarily, but I was definitely aware of it. It was definitely something that started affecting me a little bit mentally, but especially by the time senior year rolled around, I was starting to develop some pretty bad like mental health issues, especially like depression, just not really feeling like I knew where I was going in life, that sort of thing. And I continued to gain weight after I graduated. So I graduated university, I had a 9-to-5 job, and like I think is the story for a lot of people, I started gaining quite a bit of weight once I joined the workforce. I think I gained an additional either 10 or 15 pounds in that time span. And so total in in that whole, like, I guess like 5 to 9 year time period. Anyway, I gained 30 pounds, right? So initially I was like 125, then I was 155. And that was what I considered my highest weight. And I really felt like I needed to make a change. And did I do anything really around 2020 when I had hit that high weight and I wasn't happy with it? Not really, nothing concerted, but COVID hit and I was staying home more, obviously wasn't going into an office, wasn't having to wake up as early. So I was unintentionally eating less food and I got down to like the 140s, right? I was happier with my body, but I did end up eventually putting that weight on once we moved into our house. Our house has been such an interesting experience. It's not that the act of home ownership has really affected like my body image, but so many things have contributed to the additional weight gain that I have put on since then. I gained an additional 13-ish pounds from there because of grief, depression, and infertility. Pet that I had for a decade, the only pet I've ever had up until that point, passed away, which led me into a year-long depression and overeating. Infertility also, I gained quite a bit of weight from that because it sucks. It's not a fun place to be, obviously. And looking back, honestly, I just feel bad for that person. I think it's so easy to look back at a time in our life, and especially once we're out of that, to look back and think, I don't even know who that was. I can't believe I let myself get that way. And I want to say right here and right now, I don't think that, and I never will think that, because that person was so sad, was in such a dark place, and I needed to be that person to become the person that I am today. Not grateful for all of the shitty situations that I've been put through. I'm not grateful necessarily for all of the weight that I've gained, but love deeply that person at my highest weight because she decided that she wanted to make a change. And I'm just grateful for my body for getting me through all of these hard times. So I just want to put that out there. It's a part of history, like have been through a lot, I would say. My body got me through that. That's really important to note. One other thing that I want to point out is, I think, pretty important to just how I was raised. I did not have access to home cooked meals. I ate fast food, frozen food, and restaurant meals for every single meal. That's not hyperbole or exaggeration. Neither of my parents cooked growing up, and that was the only access to food that I had. So I ate very little vegetables growing up. Almost everything I've ever eaten has been highly palatable, highly processed foods, and that has obviously had an effect on me long term and in my health, and has led to probably like just not great long-term behaviors, but we're changing that, obviously. Ironically though, my parents are both incredibly thin and fit people and have always really taught me the importance and the value of like living a long time and like exercising and gaining muscle. So kind of a weird way to grow up. I feel like for a lot of people it's the opposite. Like their parents aren't very fit, but they ate home cooked meals and ate vegetables and stuff. But that's just my story, and that just is part of this. So anyway, let's talk about the turning point. It is 2024. This is when I started my journey. I had been doing fertility treatments since 2023. We started like July-ish, I want to say, of 2023, had a retrieval in October, did a couple of transfers in the beginning of the year, one of which failed, the other of which was successful, and then I had a miscarriage. And having a miscarriage is something that I don't think you really understand your feelings about until you are in that place. I expected to be deeply sad. I did not expect the deep gratitude and joy that I would get as well. I know that sounds so perverse, and I'm going to try to explain it the best I can, but again, everybody's feelings are so personal, so you may not be able to relate even if you've been through this. So after getting pregnant, I was on bed rest for 9 weeks. I was deeply nauseous for almost all 9 weeks that I was pregnant. I did not feel like my body was my own. I wanted to be grateful for this thing that I had wanted my whole life and I had been working so hard for, and I was miserable. I was miserable the whole time. Pregnancy is not fun for a lot of people, and I think I'm glad that more people are talking about that, but colored a lot of my experience. Frankly, it was just not a fun time. Would I go back and prefer to still be pregnant and do in November? Yeah. I'm not like grateful that I had the pregnancy loss, but I'm grateful for the mindset shift that I had afterwards. After my DNC, felt like my body was mine again. I felt like I could eat foods that I wanted to eat that would fuel my body, that wouldn't make me nauseous. Could move around my house freely. I could, like, just simply walking. I can't express the amount of joy that I got. And I'm sure if you've ever been in a situation where you've been on bed rest or have had limited mobility and then get your mobility back, it's amazing. Kind of like when you get a stuffy nose and you're like, how did I take breathing for granted? It was the same situation times 10. And obviously there's a lot psychologically that goes on when you go through a miscarriage and when you go through pregnancy loss. It's devastating. It's not not a fun time, but after putting myself through infertility and the whims of my body and of my husband's body and of, my clinic's schedule, I was just sick of it. I didn't want to continue. And it's funny because right after the DNC happened, right after the miscarriage happened, I was like, okay, after this is all done, after I'm healed, we're doing another cycle. But during that time period, the fact that people in my life were telling me that I seemed like myself for the first time in a long time, that I was showing interest in things that I hadn't in a long time, like, it was the wake-up call that I needed, right? It was this brief lift of depression that I had been in, this fog I had been in for years and honestly wasn't even fully aware of. And I just knew that I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. Part of it honestly was the IVF. Like, you're told at certain points, like, not to exercise, so I just didn't exercise at all. Was eating horribly, like fast food for every single meal. And previously, like, my husband has cooked dinners for us and things like that, and I've like tried to make food at home. And no, this time period for about a year, I was eating fast food for every single meal. I'm not demonizing that again or like hating myself for that because I was just in so much pain physically and mentally at that time. It is what it is. I can't change that. And I honestly, I wish I had the coping mechanisms back then that I do now, but I wasn't in that place, It's just like, it is what it is. In that moment too, had this like come to Jesus moment where I was like seeing deeper things within myself, deeper flaws almost that I have just been putting off. I cannot tell you how many times, like during the whole IVF process, where I was like, I'm gonna lose the weight once I have a baby, or I'm gonna lose the weight between my egg retrieval and a transfer. I'm gonna do that. But I was so scared of like my fertility and of not being able to have a baby and not all of these things when I didn't just stop and take a second and think, okay, shouldn't I be putting myself first? Shouldn't I be taking care of myself so that I can take care of a baby? There was a lot of selfishness baked in. I wanted a quick solution to the hole that I was feeling in my life. And I'm not going to get into all of that because that's like way deeply psychological, but I was trying to fill the void inside of me with a baby. And do I still want a baby? Yeah. Don't think it was the right time for me in a lot of ways. I needed to do some big work on myself, mentally, physically, psychologically, spiritually, all the things. I was handed that opportunity on a silver platter. It was like, here, I know this is like a shit sandwich. Like, you're losing the baby that you so desperately wanted, but like, you need to do some work, bitch. And I could have just flung the tray up and said, fuck it, I'm gonna keep doing the same thing I'm always doing. Or I could fix myself. I could work on myself. I could work on my self-talk to where I don't hate myself when I look in the mirror. I could work on the parts of me that are broken from childhood, or the parts of me that have been broken along the way, like gaining this weight and just hating myself. Like, I did not like myself. That's sad, and I don't want to be that person ever again, and I'm not. I can firmly say 20 pounds into this journey, I'm never gonna feel that way again because I have the tools now, and I have the confidence back that I so desperately wanted. So yeah, that was longer than I thought that would be. Ooh, I went off a little bit with my notes, but it's fine. So let's talk about my why, right? My why as to why I thought that weight loss, diet, and exercise would be such an important part of my overall journey, right? Because what I've been telling you is not just, obviously, like, I hate my body, my physical body, like, that's part of it, right? But it was far beyond that, right? But why did I start with this? Okay, let me tell you my whys behind this. Also, because I think when you ask me what my motivation is, I don't have motivation because motivation is fleeting, but whys get you through the hard times. These are my whys. I wanted to learn how to fuel my body. Like I said, I never grew up with any sort of nutritional, I don't want to say knowledge, because I've had nutritional knowledge. I've always been curious about things. I always do research. It's just like part of who I am. I'm a curious person. I've always had the knowledge. I've never had the know-how to actually fuel my body for what it needs, right? To create balanced plates, to respond to my body when it's telling me things. My body was telling me a lot of things with the foods I was eating, and I wasn't listening. I wanted to learn how to fix that and how to develop a relationship with food that would be so healthy that even when hard things come up, even when stressors come up, I'm able to cope, and I'm not gonna go and run to my nearest McDonald's. I wanted the cognitive dissonance around my values to disappear as well. Like I mentioned with the parental influence, my parents have always stressed the importance of longevity, of taking care of yourself, of having muscle on your body. And those are things that I value too. I also have a lot of health anxiety, so of course, like, I want to take care of my body, but I wasn't living those values, and I didn't realize how much of my brain that was taking up. I would go and get chicken nuggets, right? As I was eating the chicken nuggets, almost every time I would think to myself, this is the last time, or God, I like really need to stop doing this. Like, this is not good for my body. And I can say honestly that I don't do that anymore. I'll still get chicken nuggets, but those thoughts don't fill my head. And also, I am living so in tune with my values that I don't have that like endless chatter in my brain, which is really cool. I also wanted to get back to my younger self's mentality. And by that, I mean the pure ignorance and bliss of not having to constantly think about my body, constantly putting on a dress for an event and feeling disgusting the entire night because I don't like the way that the dress fits, or going into my closet before a date night and not a single thing fits and I just feel gross and I can't even enjoy my dinner. I don't want that anymore, or at least I didn't want that. I was sick of it. I was sick of the negative self-talk. It wasn't healthy. It was not leading me down a path that I wanted to go down down, and I would never talk to a friend like that, so why was I talking to myself like that? That was a big why. I wanted to change my behaviors to where I could be proud of myself. And then I also wanted to see if I could naturally heal my PCOS and get my cycle back to being regular. The reason for that goes way beyond infertility, but healing PCOS is really important in my humble opinion. So let's briefly talk about PCOS, shall we? Oh, such a lighthearted, fun topic. PCOS is an endocrine disorder. It has 3 diagnostic criteria, but it has so much in the way of like diverse lived experience. My PCOS is not going to look anything like your PCOS, even if we have the same 2 diagnostic criteria. You know what I mean? So the diagnostic criteria for PCOS is irregular cycles, polycystic ovaries, excess androgens, so increased testosterone, excess body hair, that sort of thing. I personally do not have the excess androgens. I just have the cysts on my ovaries, aka extra follicles, aka extra eggs, and I also have irregular cycles. Again, the irregular cycles, I don't know if I've mentioned this in what detail, because I'm just talking at this point. I have had regular, regular, regular cycles for my entire life, except for the past 2 years when I put on that additional around 15 pounds. And that is kind of what triggered the knowledge that I probably had PCOS, or PCOS was maybe affecting me. But again, for most of my life, I did have those clockwork normal periods, and I knew that with the irregularity kind of coming up, something was definitely wrong. I want to express, and this is not a brag, but I want to express that because I only have 2 of the diagnostic criteria for PCOS, from my understanding and my research, that I have a milder form of PCOS. All of the things I'm sharing should help you, but you might need additional assistance on your PCOS journey. So I just want to point that out. In case I am sharing information that you already know and have already tried and it hasn't worked for you, the severity of my PCOS might be part of that. So like I kind of mentioned earlier, what's so frustrating about PCOS is that it is so common, but everyone has such different experiences with it. And while doctors are pretty sure that there is a link between PCOS and metabolism and insulin, you rarely hear doctors actually talk about that or give recommendations about that. Often what they do is ask you if you're trying to get pregnant, and in which case they will recommend different drugs to help you get pregnant, or they say, here, take some hormonal birth control because it will help to control some of your symptoms like the excess androgens and the irregular cycles. But unfortunately, those are band-aids, and those are not things that are actually healing your PCOS. And you might be like, okay, well, Chandler, like it's like an endocrine disorder, and sure, like it affects my periods, but like I don't care. I don't want more periods. Yes, but the problem is that PCOS is putting you at a higher risk of depression, sleep apnea, obesity, cardiovascular disease, endometrial cancer, hyperglycemia or hypoglycemia, one of which I personally suffer from, type 2 diabetes, miscarriage, liver disease, kidney disease, periodontal disease, and they're seeing a link now between PCOS and Alzheimer's. So I'm not saying that because you have PCOS, you're going to get all of these different things, but it puts you at a really, really increased risk for these things. And I don't know about you, but like I don't want to die from cardiovascular disease if I can help to prevent that. You can't necessarily cure your PCOS, but you can get your symptoms under control and help to prevent these other comorbid disorders. It's important. It is so crucially important. If you take one thing away from this, it is that if you have PCOS, you should be taking it very seriously. It is not something to joke around with. It is not just something that affects periods or fertility. It is something that affects your whole body and your whole health, okay? Please take it seriously. All of that being said, there is a shitload of conflicting information online about how to help to combat some of the symptoms of PCOS, and it is absolutely maddening trying to parse through information. You go onto Reddit, and here's what I commonly see in here when it comes to PCOS. PCOS can't be controlled. It's impossible to lose weight with PCOS. I was eating 1,000 calories with PCOS and I gained weight. The only thing that helps PCOS is a GLP-1 medication, or you need to take berberine, you need to take inositol, you need to take all of these different things, or some sort of special diet will help your PCOS, like going on keto is the only way that I got my PCOS under control. Before I attempted to lose weight, I was fucking confused, and I can't express how annoying it is to try to get online and try to figure out PCOS. Like, I still don't think that I have fully cracked the code. I mean, I have in the sense that like I'm getting my symptoms under control and I'm successfully losing weight, but it's frustrating that we don't have like consensus in the medical community, and so people are chiming in to try to sell you things. It pisses me off, and that's one thing I could go on a rant about, but it's fine. I do want to say right here, let's talk about GLP-1s. They are something that I hotly debated trying, especially like compounded GLP-1 medications, because so many people in my life are on them, and a few people have tried to push them at me, but I'm really stubborn. I'm a stubborn bitch to my core, and because I knew I needed to do some internal work, I decided against using a GLP-1 medication. So they are not a part of my story and not a part of how I got my PCOS under control, but I want to say right here and right now that these are phenomenal and life-changing medications, and I I wholeheartedly support their use, not just for diabetics, okay? For me, and the reason I didn't decide to take one is because, again, I'm stubborn and I didn't want to listen to people around me. No medical provider was telling me that I should be on this medication, and I wasn't doing any of the lifestyle changes that I think should come before or at least be used in conjunction with a GLP-1 medication, right? So for me, I wasn't doing any sort of exercise, I wasn't eating very healthily, and so for me to try to control for my appetite while also trying to learn how to eat healthy, I just didn't think that was a recipe for success personally. They're really incredible medications, and the more research that comes out about the efficacy of them, not just for losing weight and for diabetics, but also for a whole host of other things. It helps to reduce inflammation, and it's great for people with PCOS. I think it's a great drug. It just wasn't for me at this particular moment in time. But I did want to point that out because I think that I see so many people, honestly, I think sometimes being jealous of people who are on GLP-1 medications, or people who see it as cheating or whatever. No, it's just like a helpful intervention that some people can use to get on track, right? I don't think that we need to demonize this amazing drug. After my literally month-long deep dive into PCOS and trying to decide if I wanted to go on a GLP-1 to kind of kickstart my weight loss, I decided that the only thing that I was seeing a lot of convincing evidence for and that I feel like I had control over was the kind of metabolic portion of PCOS, right? There's so many different ways you can attack PCOS, but I decided that this would be the easiest entry point and that hopefully by doing this, I could see what I needed to like add in or change from there. I really decided to, again, attack the metabolic problem of PCOS, and spoiler alert, it has worked. It has been the key to success for me. All right, so I don't want to get into all of the nuance and into the weeds of insulin resistance, but if you are looking to understand it better and or you want something that is just generally great, Outlive by Peter Attia. This book is incredible in so many different ways, and I'll talk about it later most likely, but I would recommend starting there. Basically, if you have insulin resistance, it means that your body is not using nutrients and glucose the way that it should be. There are two places specifically that glucose can go. Number one is glycogen stores, which is basically like a short-term storage solution, if you want to think about it like that, for blood sugar. And this is mostly in your muscles. So, you eat something, it goes into your muscles, and this is going to be used for short-term storage. Like you're going to go out for a walk, glycogen, baby. That's how your body is operating, off of those glycogen stores. And then the other place it can go, anyone want to guess? It's fat. That's the other place that the blood sugar can go. And fat is not necessarily bad. We all need body fat on our bodies to function. It's interesting to me that at both extremes, women deal with fertility issues. If you have really low body fat, you're going to have issues ovulating, and if you have really high body fat, you're probably going to have issues ovulating. Fat's not bad, but when we have too much of it, it can no longer be stored subcutaneously in typical ways, right? And it needs a place to go. So you're continuing to put fat into your body, you're continuing to put sugar into your body. It needs to be stored as fat, but your fat cells are like, we don't have room. There's no room in the fucking in. And where do those fat cells go? Places they're not supposed to, which ends up fucking with our body's entire operating system. It goes to places like our liver, leading to things like fatty liver disease. It goes around our internal organs and creates visceral fat, which we all know is not good for us. It leads also to inflammation, and that is a buzzword that I hate to use, but it is true that having excess adiposity, especially in our midsection, is going to give us inflammation, which it's not good for our bodies to have excess inflammation. What I find fascinating about this, and I think Peter Attia does a really good job at summarizing in here with his delightful little Venn diagram, is that just because you are in a larger body and have more body fat than a smaller person does not mean that you are metabolically unhealthy. Okay? Because everybody has different capacities for fat storage, and some of this is just simply genetic. So think of me, for instance, right? I am, or I have been in the past, genetically a very, very thin individual. And as I aged, I started putting on body fat, but I used up my body's fat storage. And after a while, it was like, okay, girl, like we don't have any other place to put this fat. We're going to start putting it in places that it shouldn't be. And even though at my heaviest, I was definitely not in what I consider to be, and what most people would consider to be, a larger body, I was metabolically, and I still technically am, metabolically unhealthy because I just don't have the capacity to store fat like other people. And everybody has different capacities. A lot of it is genetic. And so there are a lot of people walking around out there who have bigger bodies than I do and who are totally metabolically healthy, okay? So just by looking at someone, you cannot tell their health. This is something that I feel like I've always known on sort of a woo-woo level, but seeing the science back it up is obviously really validating. I feel like in both directions, right? Like I've always felt like in my heavier body, I wasn't healthy. And I knew I wasn't like doing health promoting behaviors like eating healthy foods and or exercising, but like I just knew that my body wasn't functioning how it should, even though I was not, now in a body that a lot of people would consider to be large, which is, again, a reason why you shouldn't listen to other people's opinions about your body. Unless it's your doctor who is trying to actually help you and knows these things. I mean, some doctors are just like, oh, being in a larger body is bad. Okay, but like, if your health markers are good, understanding that really lit off a light bulb and had me thinking, okay, I am in the right direction here, right? This is great, but like, what do we actually do about this, okay? We're gonna attack it from two angles. Can you guess what the angles are? I'm sure you can. Diet and exercise. I know it's boring, but that is what it is. Diet, specifically lowering blood sugar spikes, is gonna help to lower our insulin levels. We'll talk about that in a second. Exercise is gonna help your blood sugar because it's gonna give your blood sugar a place to go. Now, we talked about how your glycogen stores are important, but like, if you're not ever depleting your glycogen stores, your body's just gonna continue to store the blood sugar as fat, right? You need to exercise. It's important. And a lethal combination would be eating a high protein, high fiber diet while losing body fat and gaining muscle, not only for longevity, but also for your insulin resistance and PCOS. We're going to deep dive into all of this, don't worry. And why muscle, you might ask? Like, what? Okay, we haven't talked about muscle, but like, why do we need it? Again, because more capacity to process glucose and to store glucose. And when you use your muscles, insulin sensitivity is increased. It's amazing. All of this is so sciencey, and I feel like you're probably like, okay, I don't give a shit. Like, what does this mean to me? It means that the things that we know, I think pretty intuitively, are good for our body on levels that we probably didn't even understand the science behind. Eating a balanced diet and exercising, moving your body is just the key to success for life. It's gonna help you in so many immeasurable ways and measurable ones too. So those are the two things I'm gonna be talking about and talking about how they got me to my goals. So let's talk diet first, because diet for PCOS and diet for weight loss follow, I think, pretty similar conventional wisdom. When we're losing weight, right? We wanna be losing body fat. We don't wanna just like willy-nilly lose weight and be a smaller person, because we'll be in a situation where we're just in a smaller body, not a healthier one. So we want to lose the body fat while maintaining muscle, if not gaining muscle. The best way to do that is by eating a high protein diet and obviously moving your body more, but we'll talk about that later in the exercise section. And the cool thing about protein in specific as a macronutrient is that it is incredibly satiating when you're dieting. You don't want to be hungry. And compared to simple carbohydrates, it doesn't spike our blood sugar quite as much. This is kind of the approach that I was taking whenever I decided I was going to lose weight. Other things that are awesome for not spiking your blood sugar, either combining simple carbohydrates with fat or finding carbs that have fiber attached. So think veggies, think beans, think fruit, and things that we know are good for us as compared to just like a dinner roll. So a lot of my diet has been revolved around eating protein, fiber, fat, and carbs in what a lot of people would consider to be a balanced diet. I have been eating higher protein, but I have not found any sort of compelling evidence for cutting out certain food groups. I am not on like a keto diet. I don't eat low carb necessarily. I've also not found any compelling evidence for things like intermittent fasting. You can lose weight with both of those things, but they are not necessary, and I personally think that they can lead to slightly disordered eating if we are trying to like restrict the time that we're eating food, restrict the food groups we're eating. I don't think it feels long-term sustainable. Eating slightly less food just all around, I think, is more sustainable. But obviously, pick your poison, whatever is going to work best for you. Honestly, the only thing that we need to lose weight, this is going to upset some people, okay? I'm sorry. Skip ahead if this is going to piss you off. The only thing that we need to do to lose weight is to be in a calorie deficit. Notice I did not say you need to count calories to lose weight, but you need to be in a caloric/energy deficit. You need to be burning more calories than you're taking in. And like I kind of pointed out a second ago, there are 3 different ways to achieve this deficit. One is counting calories, eating less food, eating like, what do they call it? A smaller serving size. You could also do restriction of food groups. So going on one of the fad diets that tend to be popular, like keto, carnivore, and then time restriction, aka intermittent fasting, right? In any of those situations, you're going to be eating less food. In the first option, you're going to get to eat all the foods you want, just in smaller quantities. And to me, that has always appealed. I don't know. I just don't want to completely cut out bread. I fucking love bread. That's how I decided to do it. I decided I'm going to count my calories. I'm going to get into my little calorie deficit. I'm going to get this weight off, and it's been working, babes. How do we do this? How do we calculate our calorie deficit? This is what trips a lot of people up, and I wish that I had the keys and the answers for you. The biggest thing, the easiest thing you can do is to get on a TDEE calculator, calculate how much you should be eating for your height and weight to lose weight, and or just like what your maintenance calories are, because it's important to know that too. You're going to type in all of your statistics, your height, your weight, your age, and it's going to spit out a number to you, okay? This number is going to sometimes include your exercise, sometimes not. I think I use like TDEcalculator.net or something like that, and it has you select your exercise activity levels. So try to pick one that corresponds best to what particular level of activity you're at. If you're completely sedentary, I'd recommend to not be 5,000 to 7,000 steps a day. and you exercise a couple times a week, you're probably lightly active. If you get 10,000 steps a day and you work out like 3 to 5 times a week, you're probably moderately active. Regardless, whatever you put as your activity level, it's going to tell you what you need to be eating to lose weight. And if you want to lose weight, you need to be eating in a 500 calorie day deficit to lose 1 pound a week. You can go in a deficit that's smaller than that. You can eat 100 less calories than your maintenance calories and still lose weight. It just depends on what rate you want to go at. I would personally not recommend trying to lose more than 1 pound a week. I just think that it's not healthy. It's not sustainable. You're not gaining those healthy habits. You're just crash dieting at that point, and you're probably more likely to lose your muscle mass along the way, and we don't want that. So I would not necessarily rely on those calculators for your macros, but it'll tell you how much you need to eat essentially. One thing I want to point out is that, candidly, the sedentary calories number for my height and weight to lose 1 pound of fat a week was a little bit scary. Looking at that number, I was like, that's really low. And I was already going to be doing some exercise anyway, but that also induced me to exercise. I was like, I don't want to eat that little. I like to eat as much as possible on this journey. And so I'm personally eating somewhere between the lightly active and moderately active calories for my height and weight. And that has been successful for me, losing about 1 pound a week. If you want to know my activity levels, I walk 7,000 steps a day and I exercise every day in addition to that, either weightlifting or Pilates. If we want to talk about the protein aspect of things, I think an easy rule of thumb is to aim for your goal weight in grams of protein. I think some recommendations are simply too high. I don't think you need to eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. I'm not eating 150 grams of protein a day. I'm sorry, I'm just not doing it. That's too much fucking protein. But I also think that the guidelines that are provided by the government and or by RDs is a little too low, given the knowledge that we have about gaining muscle, especially if you're trying to put on muscle. You don't want to not be eating enough protein. So for me, my goal weight is 125 pounds and I am eating 120 grams of protein, mostly just because I liked that better and that was nice for me. I think that my macros, it's 120 grams of protein and 120 grams of carbs. It's easier for me to remember. Okay, I just like it better, and that's fine. I don't think that the specificity of the amount of grams of protein is that important. I just think eating more protein in general tends to be good because, again, it's satiating. It's gonna help you maintain that muscle, and it's not gonna spike your blood sugar as much as those naked carbs will. Also, I want to say the amount of carbs and fat that I eat when I was calculating my macros doesn't matter really that much. I try to make sure that I'm eating enough fat in a day because women need fat to produce regular hormone levels. I think it's 55 grams fat a day minimum for women. I could be wrong. Definitely do your own research on that, but make sure you're also eating enough fat as a woman. But I'm not sitting there and trying to crunch the numbers on everything I'm eating and make sure that I'm eating the perfect balance of carbs, fat, and protein every day. That's too much, okay? As long as I hit that 120 grams of protein, and I know I'm eating some fruits and veggies in there too, we're golden. We're good. Now, what have been the effects of this, you might ask? Within 2 weeks of eating like this, being more cognizant of protein and eating some more fiber, I was not having hypoglycemic episodes anymore. And it shouldn't be that surprising because I was eating Starbucks pretty much every morning before this. A chai latte and a cheese Danish, the amount of naked carbs and sugar that is, it didn't make me feel good, especially since I wasn't doing exercise as well to help those insulin spikes. I would eat that in the morning, and then within 2 or 3 hours, y'all, I would be fucking faint. I would be sweating, I would be weak, and I'd be like, oh my god, please, I need something to eat, I need something to eat, and it would always be carbs. So it'd just be an endless cycle, an endless repetitive cycle, and unfortunately, the only thing you can do to break out of that is switch how you're eating immediately. Just stop consuming those naked carbs. Okay, don't say that to demonize them because I love carbs and I still eat them. Probably higher levels than some people would even recommend for people with PCOS. Just try to make sure that if I'm going to eat something like white bread, I'm also eating it with protein and fat. Okay? And that's gonna help. Again, it's not crazy. You don't need to do anything crazy here. You don't need to cut out all the things you love, but let's just be a little smarter about it. If I'm gonna have a chai latte now, what I do is I pair a breakfast sandwich with it that's got eggs, cheese, and delicious breakfast sausage, good high protein little thing with that sugary drink, and it helps, again, my blood sugar. And just knowing that, just having that knowledge now, how much that affects my blood sugar and just how much it makes me feel like shit, I don't ever do that anymore. I just literally don't, because I know how bad it makes me feel. And it's crazy to me that I was operating for so long doing that I kept doing that over and over because it was easy and convenient, even though it made me feel like shit. And now I'm just so unwilling to compromise. I don't want to feel like shit. That doesn't mean that I don't have fun food, but I am not doing things that make me feel like shit anymore. Another thing that I've noticed, not having those blood sugar crashes, is that I'm just feeling so much more satiated. Protein is so fucking satiating. I cannot put into words. When I first started on this journey, I was gobsmacked by the amount of food that I felt like I was eating, and looking at the actual calories of it, I was like, wait, what? There were some days when, let's say my, calorie goal for the day was 1,800 calories. I would have eaten like 1,600 calories, and the idea of eating 200 more would make me nauseous because I was so full. That's a good problem to have when you're trying to lose weight, okay? Protein is amazing. Let's move into exercise. So you're gonna get conflicting information on exercise and whether it is necessary for weight loss. I, unfortunately, am going to be the first to tell you that exercise does not make a meaningful difference when it comes to weight loss. It's probably not what you want to hear. The reason for that is the constrained model of energy expenditure. And you're like, please, bitch, stop talking about science. Like, I'm sick of it. Okay, you need to hear this. Okay, this is really important. And I don't think everybody does know it. Let's say you go on a run. And let's say your Apple Watch calories are actually accurate. It tells you 500 calories out on the trail. And a typical like TDEE for you is, let's say, 1,500 calories. Okay, so you take the 1,500 and you add the 500 together. Boom, 2,000 calories. That means I can eat more because I burned more, except it doesn't, unfortunately. You go out for that run, you had a good time, you burn those 500 calories, you're fucking tired, okay? Whether you're conscious of it or not, you're tired. Your body is fatigued. Your body's gonna be doing less fidgeting throughout the day. It's gonna be less expressive, like with hand gestures. You're going to move around your house less. Your body is going to just, I don't want to say slow down, but you're not going to burn as many calories. So let's say normally you burn 1,500 calories in a day. Today, you're only going to burn 1,200, okay? So you can add the 500 to the 1,200, but you can't add the 500 to the 1,500. Does that make sense? As you'll notice, there is still a net benefit, calorically, but because we can't accurately predict how your body's going to respond either to the exercise itself, because this isn't accurate, and we also can't measure your TDEE in a day, it's all just kind of estimates, it's just not good to rely on exercise for your calorie deficit and for losing weight. Exercise, however, is crucially fucking important, and I highly recommend it, especially if you have insulin resistance, and I'll tell you why. Biggest thing is for longevity. I know that we don't want to think about it now, especially if you are my age or younger, but we are going to get older one day, and I don't know about you, but I want kids, and I want to be around for my kids as long as possible. I want to be able to pick up my grandkids. I want to be able to pick up groceries out of the back of my car at 75. I want to be able to get up off of the toilet at 80 easily. I don't want to fall over. I don't want to break a hip. Like, these are the things, and these are the reasons why exercise is so important. There's so many reasons beyond that, but that is really, really important. Again, beyond that, it is so crucially important for insulin resistance and your metabolism. This is another moment where I'm going to have to call out the bullshit that the PCOS community tries to spout, okay? You're going to hear a lot of people talk about cortisol and how exercise spikes your cortisol, and cortisol is bad for insulin resistance. It's bad for you. It's not bad for PCOS. Cortisol is a hormone. It's an important hormone, but the vast majority of us do not need to fear it or even really think about it, because if you have consistently high levels of cortisol, you would know it. You would have Cushing's disease. You would need to be seeing a doctor for it. If you do not have Cushing's disease, you do not need to worry about your cortisol. There are two kinds of exercise. Exercise can be categorized generally two different ways: cardio and weightlifting. And you know why these two things are great? Let me tell you, okay? Cardio is awesome because it keeps your blood glucose levels very healthy, especially in the sort of like acute, immediate time period, right? You eat a meal, you go for a walk, it's gonna help smooth out that blood sugar level. Weightlifting is also really great because, again, muscle is awesome because it uses glucose really well, better than fat. But with the caveat that this is going to take more time, because to build muscle, it's going to take more time than it is obviously to go on a walk. A walk is a more immediate thing. Doing weightlifting, it's going to have cumulative effects over time. Both are incredible, and I incorporate both personally. If you want to know what my current routine is, I do a zone 2 cardio walk. If you want to learn more about cardio zones or the importance of zone 2 cardio, outlive, here you go. Zone 2 cardio, I do a 2.5 mile walk every morning. It's about 5,000 steps. I go outside, I become one with nature. It's quite great. I would recommend it. And then I also do some form of resistance training every day. Some days I weightlift, some days I do Pilates. Pilates is more of like active recovery resistance training for me. Weightlifting is obviously, I'm lifting heavy weights and it's a little more intense on the body. Also, this is like a bonus thing, I also do some Stairmaster after a weightlift every time. So 3 days a week, I'm doing 20 minutes on the Stairmaster at around zone 3 or zone 4 cardio, just to get a little bit of burn going and to really test my cardio endurance. So that is the exercise that I'm personally doing. You don't need to do that much, especially starting out, and I didn't do that much starting out, but that's where I'm currently at with my exercise routine. But I'm gonna leave the exercise section here with a couple of little nuggets before we go. Number one, your diet is going to be more important than exercise when it comes to losing weight, but exercise is maybe the most important thing you can do for your body before, during, and after weight loss. This book will tell you why. Your diet is important, but ultimately exercise is what is going to lead to our longevity. All right, now before I I get into the questions and get a little bit more specific about some of the things that y'all want to know about, I want to talk about the outcome of what I've been doing. I've talked about it a little bit along the way, but to reiterate, I have actually shortened my cycles and gotten them to be more regular. They're still not 100% perfect, but my body weight is still a little higher than I think that it should be. So I'm hoping to see even more improvements in that over time. I have lost 20 pounds, a lot of which has come from my midsection, and I know that I'm reducing my visceral fat along the way. That's been the interesting thing, is like looking at my body and seeing the changes. And I've definitely put on more muscle, which is nice, but the biggest change has been in my midsection. Like I'm just losing so much weight from my tummy, and I love that. I love that. Resting heart rate has gone down, which is really nice. That means that my cardiovascular fitness is going up. I have been sleeping better. I don't wake up in the middle of the night in a panic anymore. I don't know. It just happened to me a lot before going on this journey. I have a lot more energy. The fact that I'm speaking like this, energy, baby. I'm also more proud of myself and more confident than I think I've ever been in my life. And I'm only halfway through. What I've realized along the way is that it's not about how I look. It's not necessarily about the weight loss itself. It's about how I feel about the things that I'm doing for myself. The immense confidence I got just even like a month into my journey when I only lost like a few pounds, just seeing yourself put in hard work every single day, that is what leads to the confidence. It's not the weight loss. And I think most people would tell you that too. Yeah, I fit into my clothes better and I like the way I look and I like what I see in the mirror, but I'm just more confident than I ever have been. I'm living my values. There's just nothing better than being able to say that like I have values and I'm true to those. All right, friends, candidly, I am refilming this Q&A section. One, because some more questions rolled in since the last time I filmed. And also I just realized I was missing a lot of things in my replies. So I actually made notes for my questions as well as the first part of this video. So hopefully I can answer the questions that y'all have had. These are going to be long answers. This part of the video is going to be longer than I had expected, but that's fine. First question is, what resources did I personally turn to for PCOS? And I have to say, I did a lot of research, but I can't really point you in any one direction, which kind of sucks. I did a lot of research via like scientific articles and also scientific studies. The problem is a lot of the things with PCOS are kind of contradictory. You'll see some studies that say that insulin resistance, for instance, is like the cause of PCOS, and then you'll see other people do studies find that like a good portion of people with PCOS don't have insulin resistance, right? The only thing that I really found compelling though in all of my research was that there is a pretty sizable link between metabolism, insulin resistance, that sort of thing, and PCOS. And you know, for my own just anecdotal experience gaining weight and having issues with my blood sugar, I figured that that was factoring into my body. Part of the issue with PCOS, I kind of talk about this in other videos, is that we know some of the outward effects of PCOS, not just, you know, the really obvious ones, which is like increased androgens, but we know some of the things that kind of factor into PCOS. But if you really want to think of PCOS as a circle, I think that that is the best way to think of it. Like have an increase in belly fat, which increases your estrogen, which increases other things. Like it is this big circle, and to try to find an entry point into the circle to disrupt it and to break it and to manage your symptoms, it's just kind of hard because a lot of the things are related to each other and some of the things are not things you can attack directly, if that makes sense. Again, the only compelling thing, the only thing that I felt like I could control easily was the insulin resistance metabolic part of PCOS, and I don't think anyone's really going to argue that there, you know, is not a metabolic component to this. I mean, maybe not everybody has full-blown insulin resistance who has PCOS, but almost all of us put on excess weight. So anyway, attacking that side of things is what I did. I didn't necessarily look for how I should be eating with PCOS. It's like once I discovered, okay, insulin resistance is a big part of this, let me see how insulin resistant people should be eating, how diabetics should be eating, because insulin resistance can lead to diabetes. I just kind of went from there, and there's a lot more information about that sort of thing than there is for PCOS, which is disappointing, and I hope that we get better research in the future and that there is some magic pill we can all take to cure our PCOS. We're not quite there yet, and I have not found one single resource that is like the place to go for answers, which really sucks. The only thing I would maybe say to stay away from is the bowels of the internet or Reddit, because I think that unfortunately Reddit is a place where a lot of people go who have not had luck with treating their PCOS and or are looking for quick fixes, and you're going to find a fair amount of misinformation and or people that are just really woe is me down on their luck. And I think that thing like PCOS, you can choose how you want to respond to it and how you want to react to it, and I don't think that you're wrong necessarily if you want to be a little bit woe is me and like it sucks, because it does suck. It is not a fun thing to deal with, but I am someone who likes to be really pragmatic, someone who feels like like it's my responsibility to take on my health. I don't want to just sit back and say like, oh, this is an impossible thing. I wanted to see what I could do for my own health. So, you know, everybody's going to approach things differently. Maybe you are someone who really believes in like supplements and you really want to add supplements into your routine. And I think that's great too. I just wanted to do the baseline first, and that has seemed to pretty much work for me. So I wish I could point you in the direction of like amazing resources, but I just don't think there are a ton out there right now. And if anyone has great resources for PCOS, definitely let people know in the comments down below. The next thing that y'all asked was, what is your routine? And I don't know if that was asking for daily routine, but I guess I can give it here. And then I'll talk more in depth about weightlifting, which I know is another question that I have been getting quite a bit. So I wake up at 7:30 every morning. I let one of my cats in who is very particular about the attention that he gets. So I let him in. I also fill up my big Stanley cup full of water, and I grab one of my Premier protein drinks. I chug that Premier protein drink and some water while I give attention to one of my cats. He's on the bed somewhere back here. And then I go for my walk around 8:15. I get back around 9:15. I take a shower, and then I have like brunch from there. Normally this is like around 10. I've like done my makeup and hair and stuff, and I will have a little bit of brunch. Normally like a breakfast bowl or something to that effect. Then I will do some work. I am self-employed. I need to make that very clear. A lot of this is a privilege that I get from being self-employed. I will do work until around 4:30. Then I will go and do either a weightlifting session or Pilates. I'll come back and work again until 10 p.m. I will hang out and like go to sleep. I go to sleep at 11:30. So also there's dinner in there as well around like 6. So that's kind of my routine. I don't think it's really that exciting. Every day kind of looks the same, but it has been working for me. And again, I want to reiterate that like I do work from home, and I acknowledge the privilege in being able to take so much time to kind of like lounge and or to devote to exercise. I don't think that you need to exercise as often as I do to have the results that I've had. I feel like I've said it a bunch as well, but like all of this really comes down to diet. Like if you want to lose weight, it's all about eating less food or counting your calories or going keto or whatever you want to do. It's about the diet portion of it. Is not about the exercise. The exercise is something that is important to me, and that's why I prioritize it. So I don't want to act like this is a normal thing to do, or that everybody should strive to spend 2 hours plus a day working out. Like that's just not realistic for most people, but I am in a privileged situation and I get to do this every day. So it's almost silly of me not to, if that makes sense. Like I'm home all day. I should spend some of that time taking care of my physical body. So I know that not everybody gets that privilege, and I want to take advantage of it since I do have it. Someone asks, was it hard getting back into an exercise routine? I'm out of shape, and the idea of starting anything outside of a short walk feels daunting. Yes, a million times yes, especially at the beginning. So in terms of exercise, I have figured out my routine now, which is again 4 days a week of Pilates and 3 days a week of weightlifting, subject to change at any time, but that's kind of what it is presently. I experimented with a lot of classes at the beginning. I did bar, I did Pilates, I did yoga. I had experimented with the idea of going to do a cycling class, but I was like, you know what? I think I'm good on that. Mostly because I would have to obtain shoes, and I wasn't even like sure if I really wanted to do cycling as a part of my routine, but it is not super fun to get started weightlifting or doing classes. With weightlifting, you're gonna be fucking sore, especially for the first like couple of weeks. That does dissipate, it does, I promise you. But yes, like weightlifting is something that is going to make you really freaking sore, and you're also gonna feel like the weakest person at the gym. Like I still don't squat very much. I see some women put on like 3 plates while they squat, and that's just not my experience. Also with classes, like I would go to bar classes in specific, and almost everybody there would be like 20 plus years older than me and not huffing and puffing like I was. I think a big part of this whole journey is like letting go of your embarrassment and your ego. You have to let all of the other stuff go. You just have to let it go. I felt kind of embarrassed the first time I went to bar and I wasn't able to do all of the exercises, but you're still doing more than people who aren't showing up. And I think that's something you need to remind yourself. Like you're doing something great for yourself, and even if you're embarrassed in the moment, once you're done, you're going to be like, wow, I did that. Like I'm so proud of myself, and that feeling only continues to grow the more that you go. So yeah, it is something that you're going to have to work through. It might take a couple of months. For me, I would say I didn't start feeling good and not sore all the time for about 2 months, frankly. And especially like when I was experimenting with a bunch of different things and not really understanding how important recovery was, like I was definitely sore more than I needed to be. But yeah, like that is just unfortunately part of the process, is like gotta start. Oh, one of y'all I think DM'd me and asked like, hey, is it normal to be as sore as I am after weightlifting? I feel like there's gotta be a solution, and there's not. There's just not. Like, it takes Advil, you can do a heating pad, like you can roll out your muscles, but like you're gonna be sore the first couple of weeks. That just is what it is. It's part of the process, and sucks a little bit, but once you get over the hump, everything's kind of, I don't want to say smooth sailing from there, but a little bit. And also, I want to say, I know a lot of y'all know that I'm doing 75 hard at the moment. It took me about 3 months of activity to be able to work up to doing 2-a-day workouts. So it's not something that I like cha-cha'd real smooth into from like being completely sedentary, and actually would highly not recommend doing 75 hard if you are presently completely sedentary. So someone asked what my gym routine is with weightlifting. I talked about this in a recent vlog. It's got like weightlifting in the title, so you can go there and I explain a little bit more in depth, but presently I'm doing 3 days a week full body. I am following Stephanie Buttermore's program, her foundations program, with a few additional exercises. The foundations program I think is really great. It focuses a lot on compound movements and smart isolation exercises, but it is a little bit lower body focused like a lot of women's programs tend to be, and I want to have a really balanced physique. I also really like working back, so I have some more back exercises scheduled into my program, and I use the Strong app to log all of my workouts. One of the biggest things with weightlifting is that you want to be progressing over time, either lifting heavier weights or lifting weights more often, if that makes sense. So let's say you're doing 3 sets, 12 repetitions. So like I'm lifting dumbbells, right, for bicep curls. I'm doing that 12 times, and then I'm taking a break, and then I'm doing it again and again. So that would be 3 different sets of 12 exercises. Over time, I either need to increase my reps, so to go to 15 reps, or I need to increase the weight that I'm lifting. That is kind of like how you progress in weightlifting and how you get stronger and how you don't stall in your results. And I really like the Strong app because it allows me to see what I did last week, and I can input either more reps or more weight. And I think by using that rather than just like the Notes app, it's really helping me personally progress. So that is what I'm currently doing. I also think the Alive app by Whitney Simmons is great. The Sweat app is also really great. And within those 2 apps, there are a bunch of different programs you could run. So a beginner's program, an at-home program, things like that. There's a lot of options out there for you. If you're looking to get into weightlifting, both of those apps, I believe, show you what the exercise is. It's not just like, okay, log the fact that you did bicep curls. It shows you how to perform the exercise. So if you're new to weightlifting, I think that's a really great thing to do. And with a lot of programs, they are designed to be for a certain time period. So like this is going to be a 6-week program, 6-week beginner program, and then I'm going to move on to something else. I think that's cool too, it being a little bit time limited. So if you ever get bored after a few weeks of doing the same thing, then you can switch to something different. So it's kind of my weightlifting advice, a little bit condensed. That is what I'm presently doing, and I like it. Someone asked if I have any specific lifts that I'm working on and how I manage between lifting and Pilates. So I really think there's a lot of trial and error involved if you're someone who wants to exercise as frequently as I do. I am someone who candidly cannot do rest days. I know that some people believe wholeheartedly in rest days, but I also think that there is a little bit of misinformation as to what a rest day is and what it should be. Definitely don't think you should be lifting heavy weights 7 days a week. There's no need for it. It's taxing on your body. You don't have adequate time to heal. The way that muscle building works is that you're tearing the muscle fibers, and it needs time to recover, strengthen those muscle fibers back up, right? Because that's how you grow the muscle. I experimented with a bunch of different ways of weightlifting. I did some like body part splits. I would do like upper body day, lower body day. I have done full body days, and just what I've landed on works for me in that I'm not like constantly fatigued. I'm not constantly just dying in any of my exercises. I do reformer Pilates at Club Pilates. It's not easy, but it doesn't tax my muscles in the same way, so I'm able to do it in between my weightlifting days. For me, when I was doing bar classes, though, I wasn't able to ever get very consistent with it because it seemed to be in direct contrast to weightlifting. And by that I mean that they just did not work well together. Bar was very cardio intensive and it involved weightlifting to an extent. If I had already done a full body workout the day before, I wasn't able to like adequately recover before a bar class. So that didn't work super well for me as a part of my routine. So I think a lot of it is trial and error, trying to find out what is going to push you, but also not fatigue you in a way that you are exhausted all the time and sore all the time. So I wish I had a better answer, but I think it comes down to trial and error there. So yeah, 3 days a week weightlifting, 4 days a week Pilates has really helped me. And some of the days of Pilates, I do some of the higher level classes that are more hard, and some of them I just do a level 1 Club Pilates, like reformer full class, and that's great. It's like a good active recovery. I'm not getting a lot out of it in terms of muscle building, but like moving my body, and that feels good. So that's how I'm managing between those two. And any specific lifts I'm working on, honestly, no. I don't really take a like powerlifting perspective on weightlifting. I'm not trying to like set a new PR every time I go to the gym. I'm not trying to like lift the heaviest amount for like my deadlift or anything like that. Oh, this question. How do you find the motivation to keep working out and being active? Motivation is a very fleeting thing. I think a lot of people will tell you that trying to motivate yourself, particular like moment in time, is just not going to get you the results you want, and it's going to be very short term. Like, okay, I'm going to motivate myself because I've got a wedding coming up in 6 weeks and I want to be skinny. Like, that's just not going to get you where you want to be. I personally personally, my view on activity is not as a tool for weight loss, which I think I've said a couple of times now, but it's just not. I weightlift, I exercise because I want to live a long time. I want to have a functioning body as long as possible. Like, I know that I don't have control over the future. I could become disabled in the future. A lot of us will become disabled in the future, but for the years that I have, that I do have the capability of moving my body. I want to feel good. I feel good physically and mentally when I am exercising. So for me, just like doing it, which is a big part of it. But I also know that longevity is a big part of it for me as well. Also, another thing that's helped me, honestly, is 75 hard. And I'm not saying that you should do 75 hard, again, especially if you're sedentary, but I do think that like setting a challenge or a goal for yourself can be really helpful. Instead of saying like, okay, I think I'm gonna go to the gym today, why don't you set a goal for yourself of, okay, at this time, on these days, every single week, I am going to perform some sort of movement. So like 30 minutes, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, at 4 p.m., I am going to move my body, and plan ahead for what you want that to be, whether it's just a simple walk or weightlifting. Like, you don't have to overcomplicate it. I actually think walking is one of the best things we can do for ourselves on so many different levels. Any form of movement is really, really awesome. A pretty strict guideline for yourself, I think, can be really helpful when you first get started. And hopefully after a while, it will kind of become hygiene to you. I follow someone on TikTok who I really like. His name is Higher Up Wellness, and he considers, for him, exercise to be hygiene. Like, it is just something he does every day as a part of being a functioning human being. That's kind of, again, the outlook I tried to take on it. It's like, I get to do this, I like to do this, and it is good for me. Like, why wouldn't I do it? It's almost like it's stupid not to. And again, at the beginning, it's like the momentum's hard to build. That's also why I don't take rest days, is because for me, if I take a rest day, I'm gonna take another rest day and another rest day and another rest day. So that's why I just work out every day. But when you're first starting out, you don't need to do that. Just try to set some goals for yourself, boundaries for yourself, and ask yourself, like, why am I doing this in the first place? Try not to make it a body goal or something fleeting, because that's just not going to get you ultimately where you want to be, and it's going to be something that is fleeting rather than long lasting. Someone asks, what part of your journey has contributed the most to your weight loss? What exercises are most effective for weight loss? Actually, I think those are two different questions I combined. Need to keep screaming this from the rooftops because I just don't think people are listening. Exercise is not an effective form of weight loss. It's just not. I'm so sorry. There are, I guess, technically some exercises that will burn more calories than others, but since we cannot accurately detect the amount of calories we're burning in an exercise, I just don't think that you should be relying on that to lose weight. I think you should move your body because you want to. That's it. Like, I don't think that exercise is going to get you where you want to be. Look me in my eyes, all of my weight loss is because I've been dieting. It has nothing to do with my exercise. Exercise is something I'm doing because I want my body to like have more muscle on it because it is good for my overall health. It is not because I want to lose weight. And anyone who tries to sell you on burn 800 calories in this one exercise, like, they're lying to you because they don't know that for a fact. Everybody burns calories at such a different rate. And if you ever hear someone talking about having a slow metabolism, that's not a thing. The way that our metabolism works, the amount of calories that we burn in a given day, comes down to partially our activity level, but mostly just our height and weight. That's it. And there's not a whole lot of things we can do about those things, unless like we're losing weight. Obviously, like, we can do something about that. But I'm just saying, like, you can't really pick what you want your caloric burn to be, and you can't just like tack on exercise to your everyday caloric burn, because there is no additive model of caloric burn. I'm sorry, that just is what it is. Most exercise that's like fairly low key. So like, if you go on a 2-mile walk, you're gonna burn about 200 calories. And it's really easy to eat 500 calories. It's not easy to burn 500 calories. So yeah, just please don't do exercise to burn calories. Do exercise because you want to and because it's good for your body. If you want to lose weight, please understand that it's all in the diet, truly. You don't have to count calories if you don't want to, but that is the easiest way to do it. Someone asked what tools I'd recommend for food and calorie counting. How did I get started with it? How did I like figure out my baseline, and how much of a deficit is food versus like activity? So that's a good question. And I touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to deep dive into this more here. So food and calorie counting is definitely the most daunting part of this because it feels so hard to understand at first. BMR versus your TDEE versus like resting energy versus how many calories I burn in activity. There are two components basically to our metabolisms. Again, there's no such thing as a slow versus a high metabolism. Some people technically burn more calories than someone else at rest, but the majority of the calories you burn in a day comes down to your height and your weight, okay? And that would be factored into your BMR. I believe for most people, your height and your weight is what determines your BMR, which is if you were laying in bed all day, not moving, not doing anything, that is your your basal metabolic rate. That is just the amount of calories your body needs to keep you alive. Your TDEE encompasses that plus all of the other activity you do in a day. So if you walk around a lot, if you exercise, those sorts of things, right? And obviously a calculator can't necessarily account for those things, so it needs to add it in itself. That's why in a lot of TDEE calculators, it'll ask you to self-report your activity levels so that it can give you a more accurate number as to like how many calories you're burning in a day. None of it's an exact science, clearly. This is like algorithmic based on what we kind of know about people, but it's not something that is tried and true for everybody. Yes, everybody at the same height and weight will burn around the same amount of calories, but it's not down to the individual calorie, right? I burn 1,500 calories with this height and weight. That doesn't mean the person who is the same height and weight as me is going to burn exactly that, but it should be around the same, right? You have to understand that there's no such thing as specificity with all of these things. Like unless you're tested in a lab and do, I don't know what they do for it, like make you run on a treadmill or something to like figure out how many calories you burn. I'm not really sure. We're going to get 100% accurate, which is why we have these tools to just help guide us. Whenever I was calculating my TDEE, I wanted to just look at the range of calories that I could eat based on different activity levels. So I input my height and my weight. I selected sedentary at first, but TDEEcalculator.net will show you how many calories you burn in a day based on your activity levels, like all of them, right? So sedentary, light exercise, moderate, etc. And when I saw sedentary, I was like, oh bitch, that's not a lot of calories. I want to eat more. And I already knew I wanted to move my body because I like to move my body, but for me, I knew I needed to move my body a little bit so I could eat a little bit more food, right? And I know some of this is going to sound contradictory. I was just saying like, oh, you don't need to exercise to burn calories. Like the fact of the matter is you're going to burn calories with exercise, but it's important to factor that into your TDEE rather than trying to add back in those calories, that sort of thing. So when you select lightly active, it's not adding in 1,000,000 calories back to your everyday. I feel like it's a very nice conservative estimate. One thing that I think trips people up a little bit when selecting your activity level, like how do I know which one to do, is that a lot of people just look at the activities that are in parentheses, right? So it'll say like moderate exercise, working out 3 to 5 times a week. Okay. But your TDEE encompasses all activity, right? So if you're not doing anything else other than those, 3 to 5 exercises a week, if you're not hitting a certain step goal, if you're not moving around more, you're not really moderately active, which is hard for some people to hear. And it was hard for me to hear at first, but that just is kind of the case. But by kind of factoring in steps along with your actual exercise, your actual like designated workouts, I think that can help guide you. So for me, I walk about 7,000 steps a day, so not 10,000. I think sedentary, they say, is like 5,000 steps or less a day, and you're also not working out. Lightly active is around like 7 to 10,000 steps a day, and a couple of workouts a week. For me, yes, technically I am working out more often than that, but my exercises, the things that I'm doing, I know don't burn a lot of calories. And how do I know that? Because respiratory rate doesn't increase very much while I am doing that exercise. So for me, I eat between the light exercise calories and the moderate exercise calories. I just picked one number between those two and I've stuck to that. I wish I could like give everybody personalized recommendations on like what activity level they should select, but ultimately you're just gonna have to make that decision for yourself. I think erring on the side of caution is good. And again, that's kind of what I'm doing. I eat the lightly active rather than the moderate, even though technically I could eat the moderate. Lightly active calories is enough for me. I'm not losing my hair. I'm not hungry. I'm fine. So I'm happy with the goal that I have selected for myself. Again, since I am not trying to like get a shitload of steps in my day other than, like the ones I do in the morning. So hopefully that helps a little bit to calculate my calories. I find them from the TDEE calculator and I will input those into my calorie counting app of choice, which is LifeSum. LifeSum's definitely not the best. It's probably not the easiest to use, but I like the aesthetics of it. And I also like that it kind of grades my day. It tells me like, hey, tomorrow eat some more healthy fats, or great job eating a lot of protein today. I don't know, just like little smiley faces, which I like. It's just motivating to me and I prefer it. But MyFitnessPal's great. I think that's what my sister has been using on her deficit. There's a ton of different options. I just like pick whatever works for you. I don't think that it really matters ultimately. I already talked a little bit about macro selection, but you just kind of got to go with what you think is good. Most of the apps will calculate them for you, and it'll also give you options to like toggle to like high protein diet or high fat diet or whatever. So just kind of pick what works for you. I also realized that at no point really did I explain what macros are in this video, and I actually had a lovely subscriber ask if I could talk a little bit about macros. So I'm going to insert that here. It feels like the most apt place to put it. So macronutrients are just the building blocks of the food that we eat. They consist of fat, protein and carbohydrates. And then we also have micronutrients in food, which is the things like vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, like all the vitamins, the minerals, and other things that also help to make our body function. And each macronutrient is so cool because it has a different role within our bodies. Protein is really cool because whenever we are trying to build muscle, whenever we go and make tears in our muscles by exercising, the amino acids within protein that we consume goes into our muscle, helps to repair those micro tears, grows the muscle, it helps us get stronger, which is so cool. It does other things too, but that's like a simple way of putting it. Carbohydrates are that kind of like short-term fuel source. So you'll see runners often use carbohydrates to help fuel their body because you consume it and it gives you that instant energy to help you go. And also it's really great for our brain. It helps our brain function. We need carbohydrates for our brain to function. For short periods of time, people can make keto work, low carb work, but it makes you feel a little foggy because you don't have the carbs that you need. And then fat is really cool because it helps in a couple of different ways. So we get a lot of like micronutrients and vitamins and minerals from veggies in specific, but veggies and the micronutrients within them are not always as soluble as they could be. So fat helps to kind of combine with the minerals and the vitamins and stuff in vegetables so that our body can absorb them better. But yeah, we need fats for that purpose. And also fats are important for our hormone health. They are what help us kind of create the hormones we need to live. So all of the macronutrients are amazing. And the macronutrients, again, are found in our favorite foods. So meat has a lot of protein within it. Tortillas have a lot of carbohydrates, and things like avocados have a lot of fat. One other thing that is included within kind of the carbohydrate subcategory, I guess you could say, is fiber. And fiber kind of changes, I would say, the like molecular structure of carbohydrates to make them more slow absorbed by the body to help with our insulin response and with the way that our blood sugar is managed. So if you compare someone eating like a dinner roll versus a handful of broccoli, your body's going to respond a little bit differently because the broccoli has that additional fiber. And that's why I recommend trying to get your fiber in whenever you are on a journey like this, because it's going to help regulate your blood sugar quite a bit. Additionally, fiber is really great for regularity, and protein slows down your digestion. So if you'd like to be incredibly constipated, feel free to eat a lot of meat and then never eat any veggies. If you would like to feel really amazing, eat some protein. It doesn't even have to be animal protein. It can be beans. Beans, I cannot stress how fucking amazing beans are. Like all of your macronutrients in beans. But yeah, that is sort of the long and short of macros, what they are, and why I really prefer protein is because I'm trying to maintain my lean mass. And that's the cool thing about macronutrients is like you get to select what you want to place emphasis on based on what your goals are. And if you don't really give a shit about growing muscle, you're not actively in a weight loss phase, maybe you don't need to eat quite as much protein as I currently am, but it is really great for my particular goals. And I think we could all, for the most part, stand to eat a little bit more protein, unless you're eating like a steak every day or something, but most of us are not. So those are the macronutrients. I'm eating the same amount of calories pretty much that I was at the beginning of this journey, even having lost 20 pounds. So that's also something that I want to mention is that don't need to constantly be changing your calories. Obviously, as you get smaller, your body requires less calories. I know this is probably going to be hard to hear, but you're never going to be able to eat the same amount that you were eating before. You don't want to gain weight. That just is what it is. And along your journey, as you're losing weight and your body is requiring less calories, you shouldn't run to change your calories after you've lost like a certain amount of weight. You need to like over time see if your deficit's slowing down, if you're stalling. And it takes, I think, at least a month worth of tracking to really see if that's happening, right? So for me, let's say I'm at 150 right now. If I was still at 150 next month, I would probably consider either upping my activity level a little bit, bringing my calories down a little bit, but I haven't had to do that yet, which is really nice. So I think part of that also is that I'm, again, eating kind of in between lightly active and moderate calories rather than eating the just true moderate calories. But another part of your question was the tools. Again, I use TDEE I use LifeSum to track, and then I also track my weight daily with the Happy Scale app. I did want to throw this in here. I didn't really know a better place to put this information, but I track my weight daily, and I actually think that this has been really eye-opening for me and has taken a lot of power away from the scale, which sounds a little counterintuitive. But that's part of my daily routine. I wake up, I pee, hop on the scale, and I weigh myself. I input it into my app, and I love Happy Scale because it has a few different ways of visualizing the information, but the best part about it is that you see the trends over time. Your weight's not going to go down every day. It's probably not even going to go down every week when you are on a calorie deficit journey. I think that the daily fluctuations are really interesting to see, and it's actually made me feel more in tune with my body. So for instance, if I weightlift, the next day, my body retains more water because my muscles are storing water in them to help repair the muscle fibers. So when I hop on the scale, I'm probably going to be up a pound or two for a couple of days, maybe just one day, sometimes a couple of days. But that's normal, and I've come to expect it, and it's predictable because I've been weighing myself for so long at this point. Also, sometimes I will hit a low weight. Like recently I hit 150, which is my lowest weight ever, but I went up to 151 for the next 3 days. Like, that just part of this process. Also, some weeks where you will not see a single digit change. You'll be at like 154.5 for like 7 days and you're losing your mind. And then all of a sudden 3 pounds will just seemingly fall off of your body. Weight is something that is nice to track so you can see that you're making progress. And I also think that in doing this, like, you realize you don't have to put so much stock in it, right? Like, your weight is just one part of the equation. Is your waist getting smaller? Are you feeling better? Are your clothes fitting better? Like, weight is important to track if you're in the right deficit for you, but it's not everything. And by tracking it daily, again, I get to see the little fluctuations. Actually, you know what? I'll show you my app. It's like, I don't feel comfortable sharing my calories, but I don't mind showing you kind of what my weight loss looks like. So this is the chart that I have right here. If you looked at the individual data points, there are some weeks where my weight does not change, but overall, the overall trend is going down, and that's really, it's nice to see. I'm not saying you need to track your weight daily, but if you want to do it and you think that you would be benefited by it like I have been, do it. I would recommend it. Other resources besides just like tracking tools, I'm someone who really likes to immerse myself in things that I'm passionate about or going after. So most of my YouTube recommended and my For You page is people talking about weight loss, whether it is tips and tricks, whether it is motivating you to stay consistent, whether it is registered dietitians talking about ways to balance your plate. Those are people that I personally like are Higher Up Wellness on TikTok for motivation. Taylor Grasso is really, is it Grasso? Grasso? Grasso. Taylor has really good food recommendations on building a balanced plate. She also recently is taking a course on PCOS because she is a registered dietitian and wants to like know more and help her clients more. So she has great advice on PCOS, and it's all very balanced and not restrictive, which I really like. Low Carb Mama has really good recommendations for easy meal preps. I'm not necessarily low carb. She has really good meal preps that always just sound amazing. Marquise Thomas for sweets recipes. Smaller Sam has amazing hacks for fast food to eat high protein and lower calorie. And I wish I could remember this one creator's name. She's fantastic. I think she's lost like 160 pounds or something like that. Again, has really great answers to people's questions and takes a really balanced approach to everything. I think that's really what I aim for when I'm looking for people online to support, is like, are you balanced in your approach? I don't want anyone who's trying to push really extreme dieting advice, like eating no calories or doing intense fasting or doing anything like that. Like, I want to live a really healthy, fun life, and none of the things I've been doing have made my life worse in any regard. I love eating balanced. I love getting motivated to work out. Those are the kinds of people that I follow. So I'm not saying you need to, and I think that everybody's going to want people that speak in different ways. Like, some of the people I recommend could be a little bit too tough love for you, right? But that's kind of the people that I personally rely on. Next question, how do you maintain sustainability? I tried to lose weight for a month. I lost 12 pounds, but I gained it back. This is tough. I've been there for sure. And I think the problem is that anytime I've tried or attempted weight loss in the past, weight has come back because I didn't actually change my habits. I just tracked my calories. And I think tracking calories is a tool and it will help you lose weight, but the only thing that's going to help sustain that weight loss is by understanding that this is forever. What you choose to do now is a forever thing. Yeah, sure, like, you're going to not eat in a calorie deficit forever, but you should have knowledge around food that you gained through this process. You should understand roughly how many calories are in things so that you're not binging or making poor decisions once you are done with your weight loss phase. Also, when it comes to exercise too, why are people picking exercises that they hate? You don't need to go and run on the treadmill just to lose as much weight as possible or to burn as many calories as possible. We've talked about why that's stupid, but also, like, if it's genuinely a fucking slog for you, don't do it. You should be finding exercise that you like. And yes, sure, I think everybody should weightlift, but if you fucking hate it, don't do it. Go for a walk. Like, walking is incredible for you. You don't have to do extreme things to kind of get to where you want to be and to like be a healthier individual. You want to take a nice, slow and steady approach to all of this. You don't want to lose more than a pound a week. You want to take this time to really learn how you're eating and what foods are going to fuel you rather than make you feel like shit. Like, there's so much to this journey that is sort of intangible, and it's like, I can say things all I want, but everybody's journey is going to be unique. You might not have the same problems with food that I do. Like, you might not have been raised on fast food. Maybe your problem is sauces and dressings, and you're gonna have to figure out lower calorie versions of those things. I think rather than viewing this as like, okay, how can I lose weight as quickly as possible, you need to view it as, how can I change my whole fucking life? How can I make sustainable changes into the long term? That's really the key to success. Don't do anything on this journey that you would not feel comfortable doing in the future. I really don't think that anyone should be doing things that they don't think they're going to sustain. And that's why I don't advocate for things like keto. Sure, not eating carbs is something you can do in the short term and you will lose weight. But what happens when you're done in that deficit? Are you going to stay keto forever? Most people aren't. Most people want to eat carbs. You can't just like add carbs back in and expect that that's not going to affect the amount of calories you were eating. So you weren't learning those habits when you were in that deficit. The deficit that like maybe wasn't intentional, but like is kind of the result of eating keto. So yeah, that's kind of my advice. And then one thing that really stuck with me and also has like really guided my journey is that time is going to pass anyway. Thought for so long that like weight loss needed to be something that was intense and hard, but it was going to be short and I could just knock it out as quickly as possible. Once I figured out that that's not the way to do it, the idea of like having to be in a deficit or having to like do all of this for months just seemed awful. But frankly, the time is going to pass anyway, right? Like you're still going to be living your life. You're still going to be doing other things during this time period. So like, why not add this to your plate? It doesn't have to be impossible. I think a lot of what I've heard from people and a lot of the comments I get from people is like, it just seems so tiring. Someone asked, after you're done with 75 hard, are you planning on eating differently? No, because I'm eating the same that I was before 75 hard. The time is going to pass anyway, and I'd love to use this time personally to eat healthier and to learn how to take care of myself. So it's how I'm balancing cooking and eating with a partner who isn't following the same goals that I have or isn't like following the same dieting that I have. So I feel like I say this on everyone. I like wish I had the perfect answer for you, but frankly, Hayden and I have very similar goals. This process has actually kind of gotten us to have some really frank conversations about like what we want for our future, and we've kind of always wanted the same things, which is helpful. But anyway, Hayden was on a little bit of a deficit journey of his own for a while. He's already hit his goal weight, so he is like happy where he's at. He is trying to kind of recomp right now to put more muscle on and lose a little body fat while he does that. So he is focusing on eating high protein as well. And when we decide on meals, or when I decide on meals, I pick something that will fit my macros, and then he can just increase the volume for himself so that he is eating, you know, a higher volume of food. So that makes it easy. But it's like, I don't want to offer relationship advice necessarily, but for me, I can't emphasize enough how much I value that I value and have always valued. Like I've always valued looking a certain way, being a certain level of fit, eating a certain way, even if I wasn't living out those values, and I've always communicated them to Hayden. He's always felt very similarly to me. So it's like, even when we fell off the wagon together, we were able to get back on it together as well. I think it would be really challenging for me to stay married to someone who didn't care at all about exercise and fitness and eating healthy. Like, you know, not to put Hayden on, he has a family history of like cardiac events. Most of the men in his family have heart attacks in their 40s. I personally am scared of that, and he is too. And for us, it's like, I just don't think I'd feel comfortable like being married to someone who knows that about his family history and doesn't want to do everything in his power to prevent that and to avoid that. Yeah, we're both really on the same page, which really helps. And I'm not saying that you need to indoctrinate your partner, but I do think that like being on the same page generally about these things is pretty important, especially just with the way we live, right? Because yeah, sure, like the food aspect is part of it, but also the activity is part of it, right? I'm spending quite a bit of my time exercising, and if Hayden didn't value that and wasn't also spending some of his time exercising, I think it would be challenging and hard on a relationship. So hopefully you have a partner who is like agreeable and or is willing to see your side of things. And if they're not, and if that's something that also doesn't bother you, just realize you're gonna have to be really strong setting your boundaries around food, maybe making yourself other meals outside of you know, the ones that your family's eating or that your partner's eating. I wish I could say like, oh, I'm handling this so well, but like frankly, like we have the same goals or similar goals, goals that don't compete with each other. So that has made things kind of easy for me. High protein snack recommendations that aren't processed, sweet and salty snack recs. I'm actually not the biggest snacker. Honestly, my view of food is that I adore it, but I don't like having to think about it, if that makes sense. I don't want to have to like scrounge for a snack, figure out what I'm going to be eating for my next meal. If someone put together like my ideal menu and gave it to me and said like, you have to eat it as is, no deviations, no snacks, that would be perfectly fine for me. Like I just am not a huge snacky person. I'd rather have like 3 really big meals and a dessert than like a couple of small meals and snacks. So I don't have a ton of snack recommendations for you. And I especially don't have a lot of unprocessed snack recommendations for you either, because I have sort of a complicated relationship with processed food in that I want to reduce some of the processed food that I'm eating, but I also don't think that you need to eliminate it completely from your diet. I think that processed food can be convenient, and I think that we've made some great strides in processed food. Like there's awesome high protein processed food, and I would personally rather like replace the normal chips I was eating with protein chips. Like that's kind of my approach to processed food and or just snacks in general. And frankly, most of the snacks, if I'm gonna have one, are processed. I just try to make sure that like if I'm eating processed snacks, that like the meals I'm eating are more whole foods based. So some of my favorite snacks are string cheese, which I don't consider to be very processed. It's such a banger. It's delicious. It's salty. Yogurt obviously is a great snack. I really enjoy the Quest protein chips and the muffins. I really like the chocolate chip muffins. They are definitely proteiny. They're not gonna like completely mimic a Bake Shop muffin, but they are fucking good. Bearable protein bars are really great. I do think that they straddle that line between candy bar and protein bar pretty well, and great macros. So I quite enjoy those. And lately I've been making like little mini snack wraps on low carb tortillas. So like grilled chicken, a little bit of Parmesan, a little bit of romaine, a little bit of Caesar dressing on like a little mini low carb tortilla. Hits the spot. It's not very high in calories. I want to say it's like 160 or something like that. So that's another little snack that I enjoy. Kind of related to that, someone asked what I eat in a day and how do I get my fiber in, because I talk often about fiber. I'm not amazing at it. It's more like do what I say, not what I do. But I have been incorporating more fiber into my diet, and one of the days this week, not to brag, when I put my menu together, does hit the recommended amount of fiber that Americans should be getting, which good for me. Okay, I'll run you through it. This is just one day of eating from this week. To start the day, I start every single morning with my Premier Protein shake. I like it. It is a convenient source of 30 grams of protein, and it's only about 160 calories. So you really can't beat that macro-wise. Like, it's pretty great. And I don't like walking or doing anything on an empty stomach. I know some people like fasted cardio or to not feel full before the gym. It's not me. It's never going to be me. Okay. So I down my shake and I go for my walk. I'm going to come back, and after a couple hours, I'm going to have a delicious breakfast / brunch. I'm going to have a breakfast quesadilla. This breakfast quesadilla is going to be on a low carb tortilla. If you hear the word low carb, look at the back of the ingredient list and or at the nutrition facts, and you can pretty easily understand why they're calling it low carb. Brands can say they're low carb if they have additional dietary fiber attached to their carbohydrates. So a normal tortilla does not have really any fiber. Some brands will add back in fiber because there is this thing called like net carbs, right? So the total carbohydrates in that tortilla, let's say it's 12. If you put 6 grams of fiber into that tortilla, technically you can advertise as only having 6 net carbs or like 6 carbs in that tortilla. And I don't eat a low carb diet, but I am trying to get more fiber in my diet. So looking for things that say low carb or even keto sometimes can help. Not trying to cut out carbs, but adding in that dietary fiber, ooh, it's gonna make you feel good. And I don't find the taste to be too different. So low carb tortilla, black beans, they're just like canned seasoned black beans, a serving of those, some scrambled eggs. So 1 whole egg, 1 serving of egg whites. Egg whites have more protein, less calories than whole eggs. So combine those two, scramble them up, and then a slice of American cheese, and then we griddle the quesadilla. Beautiful. Delicious. High in protein, high in fiber. We love to see it. I want to say that the protein for this is like around 25 grams. Like, it's not crazy, but it's definitely enough for this little brunchy quesadilla. And fiber, I mean, from the beans and the tortilla, banging. For lunch, I have on my menu a white chicken chili. It has beans in it. It has corn in it. Chicken, obviously. It just looks really good. I haven't had this yet, but I'm very excited to. And I got this from Snap Kitchen. They do a lot of like different meal preps, and I like it because I already know what the macros are, and I don't have to calculate them myself. So we love that. That obviously is a great source of protein and a fiber because beans are fiber. I love beans. Beans are the best. For dinner, I'm having me and Hayden, one of our favorite recipes, which is garlic butter chicken and potatoes. There's so many fresh herbs in this dish. It's so fucking tasty. We normally eat it as is, but I think this time around we're gonna add in some broccoli. The cool thing about veggies, if you didn't know, is that they're really low in calorie, they're high in fiber, and they fill up your plate really nicely, especially if you're on a calorie deficit. So potatoes are really satiating, but they are obviously higher in calories. I don't demonize them. I'm eating them, obviously, but potatoes and chicken, obviously kind of calorie dense. But if we add the broccoli to our plate, it looks like we're eating a lot more food. We are eating a lot more food, but it's not going to have a lot of calories, which is quite great. And also the vitamins, the minerals. Listen, it is good shit. Would recommend. And then for my dessert, already shared this recipe over here before, but it is an Oikos yogurt that's 15 grams of protein. I put a Fiber One brownie on top of that because they're delicious, and fiber, hello. Some strawberries and a little bit of Oreos and Jello pudding mix, and it's just this big, hearty, protein fiber filled, delicious dessert. The macros on this day is 122 grams of protein and 32 grams of fiber. So hitting the goals left and right, baby. Feeling satiated, having a good time. Not every day looks like that. Every day looks completely different, but again, I try to hit around 120 grams of protein, and I try to hit 30 grams of fiber a day. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes I fall a little bit short, but you can also supplement fiber as well if you want. It's better, like if we're getting semantic-y, it's technically better to get your fiber from things like beans and vegetables than it is from like a Fiber One brownie because it's a different kind of fiber, but to me, any fiber is better than nothing. Sometimes I will do some fiber supplementation. We have fiber gummies on deck for days when we're not getting our fiber from dietary resources. So last question. Someone asked what my long-term goals are, like my long-term health goals. And honestly, it feels really refreshing to be in a place where I'm thinking long-term. I'm not thinking about this short-term, like, okay, how quickly can I lose weight? What happens when I'm done losing weight? For me, I'm looking like far ahead from my deficit. It's not that I don't care. It's like once I get to my goal weight, there's so much that I want to do from there. Number one priority is building big ass muscles. Haven't decided yet if I want to do kind of a recomp phase where I'm eating in maintenance and just eating high protein, or if I want to do like a mini bulk where I gain a little bit of weight by eating, again, more protein and putting on muscle. But I want to really build my physique. I want to have a really big juicy ass and big quads. There's a TikToker, I think her name's like Jessica Bickling. Her physique is gorge. And I'm not saying that I want to look exactly like her, because we're all individuals and we all have different propensity and ability to grow muscle in certain areas, but like big asses do run in my family, so I'm gonna be aiming for that. I'd also like to take up running. I haven't been doing that because I'm getting a lot of cardio in other ways, and I think I would probably burn myself out if I tried to like run every morning and do exercise at night. It's a little too much for me. I think walking is perfectly fine. Gotta find the energy balance, but I'd like to incorporate running at some point. I also want to continue to grow in my relationship with food. I'm far from perfect. I mean, hell, I put my weekly menu together for the week and I quite literally factored in fast food for 2 of the days because I know that I am still attached to it. I still love it. And you don't have to cut it out. I never want to cut it out completely, but would love to eventually get to a place where fast food it just doesn't appeal to me as much, you know? Getting there slowly but surely. I'm eating at home a lot more and I don't feel deprived or like, I wish I was eating chicken nuggets right now. You know, it's always good to have a balanced approach, but I would, you know, eventually like to want to eat less of that. I would like to also eventually over time eat slightly less processed food, not rely on like a protein shake in the morning for my protein and find other ways to get it from like Whole Foods. But it is a process over time, and I'm not necessarily demonizing any of those foods or feeling like I'm on the wrong track because I'm doing the things that I'm doing. Like the way that I'm eating now is light years ahead of what I was eating a couple of months ago when I was quite literally eating Starbucks for breakfast, McDonald's for lunch, Chipotle for dinner. We're making growth, we're making progress. And then the last one is kind of related to fertility, but I'd love to get to a place where my cycles are 100% consistent. I can already tell that I'm ovulating stronger and better. The cycle length of the last 2 cycles I've had haven't been the exact same. They've been like within a couple of days of each other, so to me that's like pretty regular. But I would like them to be so regular and so consistent that I can easily do a natural cycle embryo transfer. I don't need to get into the weeds of like what embryo transfers look like, but I did a fully medicated embryo transfer, which requires you to get oil injections into your ass, like into the muscle of your ass. Those are some of the most painful things I've ever had to do. The injections themselves don't hurt, but the lasting effects and the knots and the muscle just pain that you get from those is not fun. And really what was the worst part is like going in for my final ultrasound. I was expecting everything to go good and to be able to discontinue the PIO because I was like a couple of days from being done with the regimen. You're supposed to do it for the first 10 weeks of pregnancy, and having a miscarriage at 9 weeks, that sucked. I had to be on oil nearly 10 weeks that wouldn't lead to a successful pregnancy. So that can sucked. So if I could avoid that, that would be long-term health goals. We'll see what happens. I feel like the future's really bright. I have been just so much happier, so much more content. I don't know that I can express it enough from doing all the things I'm doing. And I hope that in sharing this, I have expressed how happy I am, and also that you can do this in a way that is healthy, that's sustainable, that doesn't have to be miserable. I'm genuinely not miserable every day. I'm genuinely very happy. My mental health has never looked better. So thanks for allowing me to speak to you for this long. If you stuck around the whole time, thank you so much. If you have any additional questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll do my best to respond to them, but obviously do your own research as well. I think that's really important. Thanks so much for watching this video. I really, truly love y'all so much. So grateful for y'all. Thanks for supporting me in this journey. It has been so heartening to see how many of y'all have stuck around, because I know these topics can be challenging, but I'll see y'all in the next one.